Everyone at the moment has a theory about Manchester United. Even I have my own theory, and you will hear it later on in this video. But what I wanted to kind of talk about was how ready we are to express our own ideas based on so little information, and based on information from so many different sources that actually we don't even know where the information came from. You've got sources of a club. You've got sources of one person who wants to buy a club, another person who wants to buy the club, and another party who wants someone to buy the club, but in their own interests. All three of those are flooding the media with different ideas of where Manchester United is going, what is best for the club in the long run. And each of them have what I can only describe as secret agents on TV, in a newspaper, in a radio, in a blog. They're recruiting new people. They're taking people on expensive trips. They're bringing in lots of different, should we say, allies along the way to help them get what they want. And that's the thing. In all of this, and that's only just around one story and thread with Manchester United. I haven't even spoken about Erik ten Hag. I've not even spoken about Jadon Sancho. I've not spoken about Harry Maguire. I've not spoken about so many of these different people who have a massive amount of input on the future of Manchester United right now. And already you feel confused about which one you're meant to believe. Now, you might have a theory that you prefer, and you might have a story that you tell yourself, but ultimately, separate all these people off from Manchester United. Players come and leave, so do owners, so do all these things. The real core of it is the fans. Now, there's different kind of gradings of fans, right? And you've got the match-going fans. Those fans see things that we don't see on TV. Then you've got people who go to some matches. They see other things. Then you've got people who are media and journalists. That's certainly other people who go to the match, but they've got their own investment and interests. Then you've got people who just watch on TV. That's absolutely fine. If you can't get to the stadium, or you can't afford to go, or whatever it is, that's fine. But you won't see what you see inside the stadium. You won't feel what you feel inside the stadium. You won't understand what you understand inside the stadium. It doesn't make you any less of a fan. It just makes you a different fan. Then you've got people like me, maybe probably more casual Manchester United watchers and observers, but people who still, have sources and chats and have time to be able to think about these things. And then you've got people who are just global, right? So fans with many different vested interests. Some who want to see a Qatari ownership. Some who have no idea who Jim Radcliffe is in the first place. Some who think the Glazers are doing a pretty good job. Some who think the Glazers are not doing a good job. There's loads of different input on all of these different things. I think to myself, I think to myself, there's not just one thing here that Manchester United is, but if we separate all of take away the players, take away the manager, take away the owner, they still care about the entity of Manchester United doing well. But there is currently an issue. And this is the issue. Because of the way the club has been managed and because of the state it's currently in, I don't actually know how many people know what is best, and I mean best for Manchester United in the long run. Of course, in the short term, I can be honest with myself and say, I think I have an idea of what the best starting 11 for Manchester United is. And I think I have a rough idea of whether they will win or lose their next 5 games or whatever it is, right? Because we've watched the football. We know there have been some poor tactical decisions. But the next 5 games shouldn't be the thing that decides the next 3 seasons at Manchester United. This first 10, 15 games of a Premier League, Champions League, the game they got knocked out against Newcastle, FA Cup, all these kind of things, should not decide the long-term future for the club. Short-term pain should not inhibit long-term gain. And frankly, at this point, I feel that Erik ten Hag is unduly, and probably partially because of this constant media idea of Erik ten Hag is under pressure. Pressure is building. Talk is building around Erik ten Hag and his capabilities. Talk is building. Why is the talk building? Because we're all talking about it. That's very different. I know this sounds a bit conspiratorial, but it's not. To talk actually and pressure actually building. Now, each of those sources is going to have a different reason to say that. A Jadon Sancho source is going to have a very different idea to pressure building on Erik ten Hag to, I don't know, like a Lisandro Martinez type player who is very much an Erik ten Hag guy. There are some people giving good takes in this. I think Rio Ferdinand has been relatively good. I actually think Mark Goldbridge has been really solid throughout this. I can't actually disagree with some of the stuff Mark said, but I also think that sometimes some of the ex-pros discredit themselves. There have been a lot of ex-pros who've attacked Mark Goldbridge more recently, and I think that he hasn't warranted that. And I think it's shown these guys have got a bit of an agenda that they subscribe to, which is we gatekeep the club. We are Manchester United and we know what's best, but these football fans, they don't know what's best. And some of them are kind of, they want to take Mark's audience, or they want to have a very public beef with him because they benefit from that. They want to set themselves in odds with someone else because, that benefits their media career. I saw Paul Parker saying something about it. Paul Parker said this. Mark Goldbridge, he said this, and I'm not saying this, Paul Parker did. Mark Goldbridge is a Nottingham Forest fan who became a Manchester United fan. Well done, Paul. First of all, you've revealed yourself as someone who doesn't know what they're talking about. But secondly, Paul Parker then said, that means he doesn't have Manchester United's best interests at heart. Paul didn't come from the Manchester United academy. Paul came from another team. I think it was Fulham, somewhere in London, right? Could care less. But Paul came from another place. The concept that even if Mark, by the way, 10 years ago was a Nottingham Forest fan, that Mark can't be invested in Manchester United now because at one point he was invested in another football team means that by definition, what Paul Parker is saying was that he saw Manchester United as a vessel to his own interests, because that's what Paul Parker sees the world as, rather than something that he cared about. Because Paul Parker wasn't from Manchester, was he? He didn't come from Manchester United Academy. So all these pros out there who've got their agenda, stop making these sloppy, dumb arguments. And I'm sure Paul Parker's a lovely guy, I don't know him, but it's a dumb thing to say. And that's just true. Don't say stupid things. We won't need to call them stupid. But I get kind of offended by it because at this point, what I think a lot of the ex-pros are doing, and I think I've seen even some ex-pros on Sky, and I've been critical of this myself, they like to keep those fans at arm's length. Do you know what I mean? No, listen, I know what I'm talking about. I'm a Manchester United ex-pro. You're just a fan, right? Do you really know what you're talking about? And I get it, Gary Neville's very insightful. There's times where he's been off, but there's times where he's very insightful. There's times where Jamie Carragher's very insightful. There's times where Roy Keane's very insightful. But this idea that the pros who played 20 years ago know not 10 or 100 times more, they have very good insight, but know what it's like to be a modern athlete, know what it's like for Erik ten Hag to run a club, have any of this insight on a massively different level to other people who write about it or talk about it is weird to me. So that's what I'm saying is I think there's a lot of people with a lot of different interests at the moment. Some people obviously want to get rid of Erik ten Hag because they think the club should move in another direction. So despite the fact that it can be true that Erik ten Hag might be a good long-term manager for Manchester United, there are also other people who might make good long-term managers for Manchester United. Those two can be simultaneously true. You would just go down different routes, right? The difference being that some people have friends in the industry and some people don't. At this point, I think Erik ten Hag has annoyed enough people or put enough noses out of joint, and then not been backed by the ownership, for instance over Harry Maguire, for instance over Jadon Sancho, for instance over Scott McTominay, that he has basically he's not a lame duck at this point. But I think when people say he's losing the dressing room, I think the issue is you can lose the dressing room in multiple different ways. So, and I can put multiple routes out here for you, right? Number one, you are just not a good manager. The players are not going to back you at that point. That's clearly not the case because Erik ten Hag last season had Manchester United in a much better position, got them into top four, got them into cup finals, all these kind of things, right? And clearly was taking them in a good direction. I don't think that changes overnight. I don't think that changes in one off-season. I don't even think that changes in one pre-season. I think to kind of add to that as well, and I think this is what I find quite interesting about Manchester United at the moment, you can try to get rid of some players and then those players can stay because the ownership or the people responsible for getting rid of those players or the players themselves who have been signed up, by the way, by the ownership on contracts before you're even there, that's McTominay, that's Maguire, that is also Sancho, are all people who have been signed up pre-Erik ten Hag and therefore even if there's surplus requirements for him, he can't help how long their contract is, he can't help how much their contract is, he can't help any of these things. So he can't force them out in the way that he needs to force them out. Although ownership should have backed him for that. That's another way to make a manager a lame duck. Because if you then get frustrated, a player comes back in, he says something to one of his allies in the dressing room, suddenly we're in a position where, this is getting a little bit awkward. We're playing politics at a club which actually should be fully behind its manager. Then on top of that, you then have the unsure time that Manchester United are currently in. We don't know who's going to be the new football or the sporting director. We don't know who's really got sporting control of the club in the first place. We don't really know who is at the helm for these kind of things. Is it the person who's got the commercial interests? All of these are questions, by the way. I think we have a rough idea of some of this stuff, but we don't necessarily know. And then the big thing is, in the media, we are encouraged to express an opinion over something that we don't even know about. So we're encouraged to express an opinion over whether Erik ten Hag should stay or go, despite the fact that actually we know that Erik ten Hag has other plans than what Manchester United are currently doing. Why should we not allow that man to act on some of these plans, or at least get rid or clear house enough that he can then at least attempt some of this stuff? Separate Erik ten Hag away, separate the players away, separate the others away. At the core of it, the real question is, what do you believe is the best course for Manchester United? Not what do you think will get them winning this weekend, but what do you think in the long run will make you the happiest fan? And I get it, in the short term, obviously winning massively helps. Last season with Liverpool, I felt this. It's like, we're not winning. My emotions aren't attached in the same way, but broadly, I'm not happy, right? The same with Manchester United. If Erik ten Hag was winning, he's doing the right thing. But short-term and long-term goals, he's being told, compromise now, and he has compromised now. That is a tactical decision from him. He's compromised the football that he wanted to play, or he's compromised the football we expected him to play, or any of these things. And in the long run, also do well for Manchester United. Can those two things work? Is he making a political point at Manchester United that I can't really play the football that we want to play because I don't have those tools? Broadly, possibly so, right? If you give me Maguire, McTominay and Sancho when I asked you for a centre-back, a midfielder and an attacking midfielder or someone in that space, and you don't give me the resources that I need to bring someone else in, or to bring someone who's more fit in, or to bring someone who's a better leader in, or someone who fits my tactics more, any of these kind of things, can we really say that Erik ten Hag, despite him making minor sort of micro decisions in a game and those not quite working out, which I will admit, I don't think he's always been the strongest on that, can we really say that we think that those short-term decisions based around the squad that he probably doesn't particularly want, despite the spending and despite all these things, and he's only managed to change out a few of those pieces, can we really say that this is an Erik ten Hag team? Not really. In fact, not at all, right? So that's what I'm kind of confused about. Like, what is the actual goal here? Are you trying to build for the long term, or are you trying to build for winning in one season's time? Because guess what? Any other manager that comes in, be that Potter, be that Conte, be that De Zerbi, be that anyone, any of these high-end managers, cannot just come in and change things around overnight. Now, there is an interesting aspect with this, right? Which I do think goes the other way, but is also partially based on the culture that currently operates at Manchester United and at Spurs and other places. Ange Postecoglou came in and changed things overnight at Spurs, right? And so impressive. Everyone is blown away by what Ange Postecoglou has done. They're top of the league, they're playing really lovely football, he's making the most of some of those pieces he wanted. Broadly, he's being backed by Daniel Levy, and he's changing some of the other pieces at the club that weren't necessarily what they wanted into movable, workable pieces. Broadly, you can't actually say that Erik ten Hag didn't do that for a while. But Ange will have some decisions to make where he will have to annoy some people within the club, where moving certain people on will cause ruptures and will cause people to go, well, do I want to be here or do I not want to be here? And at that point, you'd hope, for Ange's sake, that he has the strength within the club and the power to be able to move those people on. He's still in very much a honeymoon period. He's still bringing in this innovative football. There's no real question over whether a player is going to leave in January or whether they're going to leave next summer. He's made some choices already, actually, weirdly, over a couple of the players he wants to keep or wants to go. A couple of them he's seen in one, maybe two training sessions. He's seen for 20 minutes and he's gone, that's not a guy for my club. Move him on. I know that as fact. Erik ten Hag has done the same. And he's begun to do the same. But Rome wasn't built in a day, is what I'm saying. And to expect with so many players out, like if you took Trent and Virgil van Dijk and at times Canate and at times Andy Robertson out the team, which by the way Liverpool did and they were told just get on with it, but that's a whole other point. And then, probably not Szoboszlai or McAllister, one or the other, and then you didn't give them X and you didn't give them Y, how would they then get on? Same with Arsenal, right? Like if you took Ben White out, probably a bad example. If you took Ben White out at right back, or Tomiyasu towards the end of last season didn't go as well when they couldn't rotate in that position, right? Or Zinchenko at left back is now getting swapped out for someone else, right? Even the plans that we didn't know existed for Mikel Arteta, but we can obviously assume existed because of Jurriën Timber, we know that he couldn't go down that route now because Jurriën Timber is injured for the long run. So I don't understand why we are now judging a manager by the yardstick we laid out even before the start of the season, before we knew that Manchester United had a bad window or whatever it was, by that yardstick. Now, maybe that's because some players didn't want to come in or couldn't come in, but we can't really blame Erik ten Hag for the long-term pursuit of Frankie de Jong, whoever it was, because he wasn't in charge of that. Was he? I don't think he was. I just don't, it's the confusing nature of most of this stuff that I find sort of weird at this point. It's like, we can hear from Jadon Sancho, but like, is anyone else making a bid for Jadon Sancho? Is Jadon Sancho anywhere else? That's kind of the point here with Manchester United, and I think it's the point I'll finish on. Football can be about 5 different roads. We could have gone with Qatar, we could have gone with Qatar and Erik ten Hag, we could have gone with Erik ten Hag and Sir Jim Ratcliffe, we could have gone with another fan bid by Spotify over here, and we could have done this over here, and all of these routes could have made sense for the club at one point. All these theories, which broadly, obviously I'm also very predisposed to give, are good theories, right? But we know too much about Manchester United. I feel like I know too much about the inner workings of what's going on, and I don't even know that much. So that's what I'm saying here, is like, all of these theories can be cool, and all of them some of them might make you feel better about your club and make you feel like in the long run it's going well. Well, guess what? Practically, you might actually be able to get a manager and an owner that make you actually feel that way, instead of just a fan channel that make you think you are going that way. There are a lot of apologists out there. On the other side of it, someone who evaluates your club and knows that in the long run it's very difficult to rebuild an institution unless you do stick with some of these people and make some difficult decisions, sell some people, bring in some new talent, all these kind of things, that's also can be true. But the practicality of football, and here's the great thing about it, right, which is so different to so many of the analogies and so many of the theories that we use. In practicality, us saying, oh, Jadon Sancho could play well, he plays well in my FIFA, I know, or my EA FC. The point being, but he isn't playing right now. So saying, Antonio Conte would do a job here, yeah, but he isn't Manchester United manager. Erik ten Hag is. So what chat helps Erik ten Hag the most right now, if you're a Manchester United fan? Well, I know what that's like as a Liverpool fan. I know that when Jurgen Klopp was going through his dark days, when Brendan Rodgers was going through his dark time, we decided to go with someone else. When Rafa Benitez was going through a difficult time, he went somewhere else. When, multiple different managers now have suffered this fate at Manchester United. These are well-walked footsteps by other fans. And weirdly, for some weird reason, we treat him as the new situation at Manchester United. Stick with Erik ten Hag for now. It makes no sense to get rid of him financially, tactically, any of these things. The point being, the short-term pain is better for the long-term gain at Manchester United. But can you make it through this short-term pain with so many owners, so many invested parties who have so much to say and yet know so little? I'd love to know what you guys think about this video. I'd love to know what you think about Erik ten Hag. Do you think he should be held more responsible, less responsible? Do you think the long term is more important than the short term wins this season that Manchester United can get? People, I get it, being in the Champions League is very important, but it's clearly not something which predisposes Manchester United to doing better or worse in the long run. They are just a big entity at this point. It's worth acknowledging. Is it good to get rid of individual players? Is there a reason Jadon Sancho is wanted out of the club, or other clubs don't want him? Is there a reason that other clubs couldn't satisfy Harry Maguire? Is there a reason that some people couldn't take McTominay? All these kind of things. These are all individual situations which will manipulate and change what you think of the club. So let me know in the comments below, and I will chat to you guys again in a little while. Let me know those theories. We'll be covering a lot on the football this weekend. I think I'll be doing the Arsenal game, Liverpool game. When do Manchester United play? Good question. If you didn't already hit subscribe, hit it, and I will see you guys again in a little while. Mashallah.